This episode is brought to you by MGM Plus. From and its Horrors returns for season 4, centered around a town that traps all those who enter. Terrifying creatures that come out at night. Horrors some wished had stayed buried. Where desperate hope leads to darker truths. Dangerous new arrivals, a sinister figure, a shocking revelation. From season 4 premieres April 19th on MGM Plus. Some doors should remain closed.
Don't let tax refund worries hold you back. File now with TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They'll find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve, or your money back. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. Today, I'm joined by my politics team colleague Danielle Battaglia, who covers Congress and the federal government's impact on North Carolina. Danielle has covered U.S. Senator Thom Tillis for several years. He's familiar here. It's been a little bit different on the national scale in recent months. I'm going to play an audio clip from Danielle's story, or two stories she wrote about Tillis, that gives you a little bit of how Tillis has been talking in Washington lately. Here's that clip.
Some people around here call me cranky. I've got a couple of buddies that call me cranky. You know what makes me cranky? Stupid. And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. It's not a secret that I have problems with the Secretary of Homeland Security and the way that her failed leadership has led to unconscionable results in Minneapolis. But another part of the Secretary of Homeland Security job is disaster response. And I cannot tell you enough how incompetent, based on the facts, that she is on that score as well.
That was Tillis talking about being cranky and about his opinions on President Trump's advisors. So is this really, I mean, obviously Tillis, everybody here in North Carolina is familiar with Tillis. He's gotten more attention since he chose not to run again after a decision made last summer after a fight with Trump, right?
Yeah, so he and President Trump got into a sparring match. It was on social media. We all saw it. I was ironically at my grandmother's house eating her Sunday pasta, watching this all unfold with alerts going off on my phone. I did not have my phone at the table. Yes, I did. But they were fighting over the One Big Beautiful Bill and the impact it was going to have on Medicaid recipients in North Carolina. At the time, he estimated about 663,000 North Carolinians would lose Medicaid coverage from the One Big Beautiful Bill. That number's ebbed and flowed a little bit, but these numbers were coming from Dr. Oz, who is over Medicaid in the United States. And they had met. It was him and Berger and Tillis had all heard these numbers, and he was deeply concerned about it. And wasn't going to back down on not voting for this bill, basically got into a spat with Trump and said, find somebody to replace me. And Trump was like, I will.
Well, now that Medicaid money is coming home to roost here in North Carolina at the front door of the General Assembly, so we'll be hearing a lot more about Medicaid funding in the coming years here. Of course, Michael Whatley was Trump's pick to be the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. Whatley won his primary, and he's facing off against former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. Danielle, of course, is covering that race. But Tillis himself, you've covered him for several years. You've talked to people that have known him for several years. Is he really that much different now, or maybe a little bit?
So it's funny because when I hear people talk about them, they all feel like he's very different. Me and some of the people I talk to who interact with him on a regular basis, I don't feel like he's changed that much. I believe, Senator Keister Sinema, former senator, she called it baloney that he's changed. And I also spoke with Senator Chris Murphy. He also didn't think there's been much of a change there. The way that Senator Tillis described it to me is he hasn't changed in terms of what he thinks and how he's talking, except that he doesn't have to use a filter. So when he says what he says, He can say it without having to go meet with his political advisors and figure out how many ads he has to run, how many town halls he has to do, how many mailers has to go out to explain what he just said and make it understood by the public. So it doesn't affect his re-election campaigns. And so in that way, he does admit that he's a little bit more unfiltered because he doesn't have to care. But he's also like, I'm the same person I've always been. And that's kind of how I viewed it, even approaching the story, was if you look at him as a whole, he's like the same man you've always seen. I feel like people are going to push back on me as soon as I say that because some of the votes he took early in the second term of Trump's administration.
And neither one of us covered him when he was State House Speaker here.
I dabbled in it just from afar in the triad. We would talk about what he was doing and how it was affecting the triad, but like not enough to talk intelligently about it.
So a lot of your interviews with him these past years have been, chasing him in the halls and in D.C. and just a little bit here and there. So this was a longer conversation, a longer interview. What did you learn from that you don't get in this kind of the short memory? It's like not memory, short moments of covering somebody.
Well, Senator Tillis, and like I will start with, he is a very busy man. I have camped outside his office. I see how many meetings he takes a day because people are constantly going in. He is one that is very lovely with the media and will let us do walk and talks with them. So basically, I will meet him sometimes at his office door and walk with him to the Senate subway and walk with him to the Senate chamber. We're not allowed in the Senate chamber, so that's where I have to stop. It's like maybe 5 minutes at the most, if I'm lucky, and that's with multiple media people coming in. This was an actual sit down on the phone. We got to talk. I think we were on the phone for 40 minutes. Thank you, Senator Tillis. And it was interesting because we actually got to dive into his entire life story, which is riveting, actually. I mean, he's a very interesting, complex person. He moved 20 times by the time he was 17. He's lived in Florida, New Orleans, Tennessee. He was all over the place, all over the Southeast, I would say. We learned he walked cats for a living at one point. I guess it was a cat, but it originally was told to me as cats.
Do cats need help going on a walk?
Apparently he had an elderly neighbor who had a cat that liked to walk on a leash, so he was paid either in money or biscuits to walk the cat.
I think it's fair to say that Tillis is a character.
He is a character. And I will say, I don't think this came across in my piece, but every person I interviewed talked about how hilarious he was, which is a side of him I would say I don't really see either, although I do have fun covering him because he is funny. But I don't get to see the funny of Senator Tillis.
Right, serious business governing. So what in your conversation and when you're working on the story and talking to other people, things about Tillis that maybe people don't know, maybe if they're familiar some with his backstory or kind of his most pointed comments, in Congress?
Yeah, I think something really to take away from the story is I didn't realize, and there's multiple reporting in the past that he gave up $500,000 to flip the state red. We were a Democratic-led state. It was really Senator Tillis who said, I think in 2011 we could take the House and the Senate. And he gave up his partnership at Price Waterhouse. And he told me, and actually I should say he was at IBM because they had merged at that point, but he told me at the highest he was making $1 million a year. And he gave that up for $13,951 salary and put, I think, 40,000 miles on his, I quote, ugly blue truck to go recruit Republicans to flip the House and the Senate. And I'm just like, I can't imagine walking away from $1 million. That is mind blowing to go from $1 million to $13,000 to me. My favorite part of your story is the anecdote of what he was doing when he made that decision. So tell our listeners that if they haven't read it yet. Yeah, and I told Dawn this morning, and I really did mean it, that I wrote this part for her. He was telling me in great detail that his favorite meal in the legislative building is the fried fish sandwich. And he ordered a fried fish sandwich. He had made a deal with IBM that he could be a lawmaker. He voluntarily gave up parts of his salary whenever he was at the legislative building and not working for IBM. But they had called him that day and said, hey, we need you back at IBM full time, basically retire from being a legislator. And he said by the time that the fried fish sandwich had been cooked for him, he had quit his job to flip the party.
That might be one of those special lawmaker dining room only meals. I don't know if I've seen the fried fish sandwich.
I didn't remember. And I wonder
there.
too if it's the snack bar.
I don't know if they do fish there. I know there's they do serve fish. Maybe you can get a sandwich.
Maybe it was before our time.
Yeah, so that's the Tillis there. We already know there are the Chester fries that you can get at the LOB. Now it's the Tillis fish sandwich, if you can say that three times fast. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Thom Tillis.
TaxAct knows every small business owner has different tax filing needs. With TaxAct, you can file yourself with the help of an expert, or TaxAct can do it all for you. You're the boss, the head honcho, the top banana. And TaxAct is like your loyal, trusty tax aide, ready to pounce on any tax needs you might have. TaxAct is dying to pounce on some small business tax needs. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Buick Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Buick.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating US GM dealers only, highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends May 31st, 2026. Not available with other offers.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with Danielle Battaglia. We're talking about U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, whose term is ending at the end of the year, and he's had plenty of things to say. We're going to play another audio clip of Tillis commenting about Greenland, about destroying buildings, and Putin. Here's that medley of Tillis sayings.
Mr. Miller said that the U.S. government, obviously, Greenland should be part of the U.S. That is absurd. People that harm police officers and destroy federal buildings should go to prison. And it's a damn shame they're out, because nearly 36 of them have actually been arrested for another crime since they were pardoned. Vladimir Putin is a liar, a murderer. This man is a cancer and the greatest threat to democracy in my lifetime.
All right, so we've got kind of a variety of ways that he's spoken out and has gotten him a lot more attention,
Yeah. He's been pretty outspoken. It's funny, he tells me nothing gets under his skin, and I was about to say nothing gets under his skin quite like defending Putin. Don't do it. Madison Cawthorn can tell you, don't do that in front of Senator Tillis. He has made it very clear he thinks that Putin is a murderer, a liar, evil. He's been lashing out at people like former Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and calling Stephen Miller amateurish and his opinions stupid. Also in that clip, you hear him talking about the January 6th defendants. This is not popular with President Donald Trump, but he pardoned the January 6th defendants, and that is one thing that Tillis is not happy with, because he was there that day. He says he's one of the last senators to leave the Senate chamber, and he's like, I saw what happened. I saw how our law enforcement stood up for us. He just recently fought to get a plaque for the law enforcement who were there that day to be hung in the Capitol, because House Speaker Mike Johnson refused to hang it, and it is officially hanging there. So you hear him now speaking out for things that he just feels very strongly about.
And we've seen with a lot of those people that were pardoned for January 6th going back to jail for some terrible things.
Yeah, and he's talked about that too. He's basically called it a mistake and said that, that allowing this to happen, allowing them to be pardoned, you're allowing it when you wouldn't allow this in any of our states to happen.
Crime seems to be a campaign issue every year, with people attacking each other on who's harder or softer on crime, which we'll see. Like already we're saying in the US Senate race, of course, people can bring up things like January 6th as well. One other thing I wanted to mention from that clip where he was talking about Greenland and Stephen Miller went to Duke. I feel like there's always some North Carolina connection to a lot of sort of the Trump era.
Yeah.
Also, Nixon went to Duke, not part of the Trump era, but as far as people that have gone to Duke. So what is Tillis going to do now?
So Senator Tillis, we know he's retiring from Congress, and there's rumors he's running for governor. He is completely putting an end to that rumor, but he will say he loves to encourage it when he hears it. He thinks it's hilarious. People he thinks he's going to run for governor. He has no further political aspirations. He said he's done with politics. His immediate goal is to go hang out with his lovely wife, Susan, and their 3 grandbabies in Huntersville. I always want to say Hendersonville, and Huntersville hates when I switch them out. But he's going to go back to Huntersville, and it sounds like he wants to consult on various topics that have risen to his attention, from AI to, finance, tech, healthcare, education. He gave me a whole barrage of topics he wants to consult on. He said, you'll expect to see him in Raleigh consulting on that kind of thing, but don't expect him to file as a lobbyist. He will stop short of anything that requires him to do so.
I'm sure he'll come hang out at the legislative building here and there. I've seen him over there since he left, and it's hard for people to stay away, I think. Yeah, he could go to the cafeteria. So it's only April. What can we expect from Tillis the rest of this year?
Well, we have until, I believe, January 6th would be his last day. And so, you got a while with him. He told me you're going to see him on the campaign trail. He is going to support Michael Whatley. He does not want to see his seat go to a Democrat. And what really is worrying him more than anything is the supermajority and the majority in the state House and Senate. He basically said to me, I'm leaving my political career, and I don't want to see the thing that I fought so hard for to be undone as I'm walking away. And so he wants to make sure that the North Carolina House and Senate maintain their majority for Republicans. And he's going to work to make sure that happens. I don't know what that looks like. I also wonder, because the GOP has not always been friendly to Tillis, how much they allow him to do that as well, either in front or behind scenes. But that is his plan moving forward. And I think you'll see a lot of him being his unfiltered self on the Senate floor in Washington.
All right. Well, Senator Tillis, we look forward to hearing you comment in the News and Observer and the Charlotte Observer more frequently to us about anything that we're working on. It's so huge that Tillis is leaving after just his long North Carolina political career. Senate Leader Phil Berger is leaving at the end of the year. 2027 is going to be so different in North Carolina politics, regardless of the results of the November elections.
It's a big change.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, any last Tillis things we should get in before we move on to Headliner?
I feel like there were so many fun antidotes. You know what? I'm very sorry of how much I had to leave on the cutting room floor when we write these stories and interview so many people. There's a lot we couldn't use. He is so fascinating as a man. So there's a lot that I haven't been able to tell, and I'm hoping to in future stories. I also am very sad that in our top 10, I could not find the quote. So somebody find it for me, where he says that UFOs are sexy, but they're not coming from outer space.
Okay, I don't even know how to respond to that. Thank you for leaving the legislative cafeteria or snack bar anecdote in your story, and you can read more of Danielle's coverage at newsobserver.com. Okay, let's move on to our picks for Headliner of the Week. Danielle, I'll start with you.
So I'm going to go, because we had a fun discussion before this started, that I found a plaque outside our office that Ronald Reagan gave a Presidential Medal of Freedom to Kate Smith right outside our office. The plaque is right underneath the acorn for Raleigh that they drop every New Year's Eve. And I just happened to go sit out there to catch a breath of fresh air while I was writing actually the Tillis piece. So I just like historic signs. Thank you for having them, North Carolina.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that it was there as we were talking through our headliners before we started recording. We actually pulled up the YouTube video of when Reagan was in downtown Raleigh for the ceremony and everything. So, a good reminder to look around every once in a while. And I just quoted Ferris Bueller. Okay, my headliner, speaking of looking around once in a while, is thankfully the pollen is not as bad as it was recently, and the tied to all of that, of course, is springtime in North Carolina and here in Raleigh. Just driving downtown, it's really just enjoying everybody's yards and flowers and blooming everything. Even though people don't like the Bradford pear tree, they still look nice. I'm just going to say it. There's a bunch of those, I believe, right behind the legislative building, and it's just really nice to see springtime blooms in Raleigh. So that's how I'll end on our lighter note for this episode of Under the Dome. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan with Danielle Battaglia, producer Kevin Keister. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.